The courtroom in Jefferson County Courthouse had the quiet, controlled tension that always hung in the air before a morning docket began. Sunlight slipped through tall windows, casting long rectangles of light across polished wooden benches. Lawyers shuffled papers. A bailiff leaned against the back wall with the practiced boredom of someone who had watched hundreds of cases pass through the same room. It was supposed to be an ordinary hearing, just another misdemeanor case among dozens scheduled that morning. But by the end of the day, the footage from Courtroom 3 would be circulating across the country, and several careers would never recover. The man at the center of it all sat quietly at the defense table. His name was Marcus Bennett, 38 years old, tall, calm, broad-shouldered in a way that suggested years of discipline rather than vanity. His dark blue suit was pressed perfectly, though it was clear it wasn't brand new. He sat upright with his hands folded on the table. No fidgeting, no nervous glances, just stillness. The public defender assigned to him, Rachel Kim, leaned closer and whispered something. Marcus nodded once. Rachel had reviewed the file earlier that morning. It was strange. Marcus Bennett had been arrested 2 nights earlier during what police described as a routine traffic stop escalation. According to the arresting officer, Marcus had refused to comply with commands and had resisted arrest. The charge was disorderly conduct and obstruction. Nothing major, but the arrest report had inconsistencies, and the body cam footage attached to the file had an unusual note from the department stating, "Portions unavailable due to technical malfunction." Rachel had practiced law long enough to recognize that phrase. It meant something had gone wrong. Across the room, standing near the side entrance, was the officer responsible for the arrest. Officer Daniel Hargrove, 6'2", thick build, late 40s, the kind of presence that filled a room even when he wasn't speaking. He had the swagger of someone who had worn the badge long enough to believe the rules bent around him. Hargrove stood with his arms crossed, scanning the room. When his eyes landed on Marcus Bennett, his lip curled slightly. Recognition, contempt. 2 nights earlier, Hargrove had pulled Marcus over on a quiet road outside town. It had started with a broken tail light, or at least that's what the report said. In reality, the stop had been something else entirely, but that conversation had never made it into the official report. At 9:01 a.m., the side door behind the bench opened. All rise. Judge Eleanor Whitmore entered the courtroom. She was a veteran judge known for 2 things: efficiency and patience. But even patience had limits. Everyone stood as she took her seat. "Be seated." Papers rustled. Chairs creaked. The clerk began calling cases, one after another: minor offenses, probation violations, traffic disputes, each one resolved within minutes. Then came the name: State versus Marcus Bennett. Marcus rose slowly with Rachel Kim beside him. Across the room, Officer Hargrove stepped forward. Judge Whitmore glanced down at the file. "Mr. Bennett, you're charged with disorderly conduct and obstruction during a traffic stop. How do you plead?" Rachel spoke calmly. "Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty." The judge nodded. "Very well. Officer Hargrove, you're the arresting officer." "Yes, Your Honor." His voice carried the confidence of someone accustomed to being believed. "What happened that evening?" Hargrove cleared his throat. "I conducted a routine traffic stop due to a broken tail light." The defendant became argumentative and refused lawful commands. "When I attempted to detain him, he resisted." He said it smoothly, like he'd said it many times before. Judge Whitmore turned her attention toward Marcus. "Mr. Bennett, do you have anything to say regarding the officer's statement?" Marcus spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, measured. "I complied with every instruction." Hargrove scoffed loudly. Rachel immediately glanced toward him. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Officer, you'll remain silent unless addressed." "Yes, Your Honor." But the tension in his posture remained. Rachel stepped forward. "Your Honor, we believe the body camera footage will clarify what actually happened during the stop." Judge Whitmore nodded. "Do we have the footage?" The prosecutor hesitated. "Your Honor, portions of the recording appear to be missing due to a technical malfunction. Rachel didn't hide her skepticism. What portion exactly? The prosecutor glanced at the file. Approximately the first 6 minutes. Rachel blinked. The first 6 minutes? Meaning the moment the stop began? Yes. She turned slowly toward the judge. Convenient. A quiet ripple of murmurs passed through the gallery. Judge Whitmore tapped her gavel lightly. Order. She turned to the prosecutor. Do we have any footage at all? Yes, Your Honor. From approximately 6 minutes after the stop. Very well. Play it. A small monitor was wheeled toward the bench. The video began. Grainy body cam footage appeared. Marcus stood beside his car. Hargrove's voice barked commands. Hands behind your back. Marcus's hands were already raised. I'm complying. The officer moved closer. The footage showed a sudden shove. Then another. The camera shook violently. Marcus stumbled backward. The courtroom watched silently. Judge Whitmore's expression hardened slightly. Officer, she said slowly, why does the footage begin after physical contact has already occurred? Hargrove shifted. As I said, Your Honor, technical malfunction. Rachel crossed her arms. The explanation sounded thin, but the hearing continued. Then something happened that no one in the room expected. As Marcus stepped back from the defense table, preparing to sit again, Officer Hargrove suddenly moved forward. Too fast, too aggressive, and in full view of the courtroom, he kicked Marcus Bennett in the side of the leg. A sharp, deliberate kick. Marcus stumbled. Gasps erupted across the courtroom. Rachel shouted, Hey! Judge Whitmore slammed her gavel. Officer Hargrove, what are you doing? But Hargrove wasn't apologetic. He sneered, just reminding him to show respect. Marcus steadied himself. Slowly, very slowly. Then he looked up, and for the first time since entering the courtroom, something changed in his eyes. Not anger, not fear, something else. Recognition, calculation, the kind of calm that didn't come from ordinary people. Rachel turned toward him. Marcus, are you okay? He nodded once. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Hargrove immediately stepped forward. Don't. But Marcus didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a small black card holder. Inside it was a metal insignia. He placed it calmly on the defense table. The room leaned forward. Rachel looked down at it. Her eyes widened. Judge Whitmore leaned slightly over the bench. Mr. Bennett, what is that? Marcus answered quietly. United States Navy identification. Hargrove laughed. Oh, please. Marcus met his eyes. Then he said 5 words that would completely change the direction of the case. I'm a retired Navy SEAL. The room went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. But the real twist hadn't even started yet. Because within the next 20 minutes, everyone in that courtroom would learn something far more shocking. Marcus Bennett hadn't just served in the Navy. He had spent years in operations so classified that even local law enforcement wasn't cleared to know about them. And the man who had just kicked him had made the worst mistake of his career. For a moment, the courtroom existed in a strange, suspended silence. Marcus Bennett's words seemed to hang in the air like something fragile. I'm a retired Navy SEAL. No one spoke. The gallery, filled with people who had come to watch routine hearings, leaned forward in their seats. Judge Eleanor Whitmore stared down at the small metal insignia resting on the defense table. Rachel Kim was still looking at it, processing what she had just heard. And across the room, Officer Daniel Hargrove scoffed again. But this time, the sound carried less confidence, more irritation. Your Honor, Hargrove said, his voice edged with sarcasm. People claim all kinds of things when they're trying to get out of charges. Marcus didn't react. He simply stood there, still composed, still calm. Rachel finally picked up the insignia carefully and looked closer. It wasn't flashy. No gold plating. No decorative emblem meant to impress. Just a simple piece of identification issued by the United States Navy Special Warfare Command. Her legal instincts immediately shifted. Something about this case had already felt wrong. Now it felt dangerous. She placed the insignia back on the table and turned to the judge. Your Honor, I would like a moment to verify my client's credentials. Judge Whitmore nodded slowly. Granted. Across the room, Hargrove rolled his eyes. You're really entertaining this? The judge's gaze snapped toward him. Officer Hargrove, you've already disrupted these proceedings once. I suggest you choose your next words carefully. For the first time that morning, Hargrove seemed slightly uncertain. Rachel stepped closer to Marcus. Her voice lowered. You didn't mention any of this. Marcus replied quietly. You didn't ask. That's not exactly the kind of thing that comes up during standard intake interviews. Marcus gave a faint, humorless smile. Most days I prefer it that way. Rachel exhaled slowly. Are you telling me this is legitimate? Marcus reached into his jacket again. This time he removed a folded document. Not hurried, not defensive, just deliberate. He handed it to her. Rachel unfolded the paper. Her eyes moved across the header, then the signatures, then the official seal. Her expression changed. Completely. Your Honor, she said slowly. I believe the court needs to see this. She walked the document to the clerk. The clerk handed it to Judge Whitmore. The judge adjusted her glasses and began reading. The room remained silent, but the silence felt different now. Tense. Electric. Officer Hargrove shifted his weight. Your Honor, with respect, this seems irrelevant to... Officer. The judge didn't even look up, but the word stopped him immediately. She continued reading. Then she set the document down carefully and looked directly at Marcus Bennett. Mr. Bennett, according to this, you were attached to Naval Special Warfare Development Group for 8 years. Marcus nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. A few people in the gallery whispered. Even those unfamiliar with military structure understood enough to recognize the significance. The judge continued. You received multiple commendations for operational conduct. Yes, ma'am. She leaned back slightly, then turned her attention toward Officer Hargrove. Officer, are you aware that assaulting a defendant inside a courtroom is a criminal offense? Hargrove straightened defensively. I barely touched him. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Rachel's eyebrows lifted. Barely touched him? Judge Whitmore's voice turned cold. We all witnessed the incident. Hargrove's jaw tightened. He was being disrespectful. Marcus spoke again. Calmly. I was standing still. Rachel turned to the judge. Your Honor, I would like the court reporter to note that my client had not spoken or moved when the officer approached him. The court reporter nodded. Judge Whitmore looked toward the bailiff. Deputy Harris, did you observe the incident? The bailiff stepped forward slightly. Yes, Your Honor. What did you see? Harris hesitated, not because he was unsure, but because everyone in the room knew what his answer meant. I saw Officer Hargrove strike the defendant with his foot. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Hargrove's face flushed. That's not what happened. Judge Whitmore slammed the gavel once. Enough. The room fell silent again. She turned toward the prosecutor. Counselor, do you intend to pursue the charges against Mr. Bennett? The prosecutor looked uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Your Honor, given the circumstances, I believe it would be appropriate to review the evidence further. Rachel folded her arms. I thought the officer's report was clear. The prosecutor avoided her eyes. Well, the missing body camera footage raises certain questions. Marcus remained quiet, watching, observing. Across the room, Hargrove's confidence was fading. But something about his expression suggested he still believed he could control the situation. He stepped forward again. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The guy resisted arrest. Marcus looked at him for the first time since revealing his service. You initiated physical contact. Hargrove laughed. Oh, please. Marcus's voice didn't change. You grabbed my arm without issuing a lawful command. Hargrove's smile faltered. You tried to place me in restraints without stating the reason for detention. Rachel slowly turned toward Marcus. You remember everything. Marcus nodded slightly. I was trained to. The room shifted again. This was no longer a simple misdemeanor case. This was beginning to look like something else entirely. Judge Whitmore tapped the edge of the file on her desk. Officer Hargrove, I want to return to the body camera footage. Hargrove stiffened. Yes, Your Honor. The first 6 minutes are missing. Technical malfunction. That seems unusually convenient. It happens. Rachel stepped forward. Your Honor, may I request that the court issue a preservation order for all department video systems connected to that stop? The prosecutor looked alarmed. Judge Whitmore raised an eyebrow. What systems? Rachel answered immediately. Dash cam, body cam docking logs, dispatch radio recordings, nearby traffic cameras. Hargrove's eyes flickered. For the first time, genuine concern appeared. Judge Whitmore noticed. Officer, is there something you'd like to clarify? No, Your Honor. Marcus spoke again. Quiet, but clear. There was another camera. Everyone turned toward him. Judge Whitmore frowned slightly. What camera? Marcus looked directly at Hargrove. The one mounted on the patrol car behind us. The officer's face went pale. Rachel's head turned sharply. There was a second unit present? Marcus nodded. They arrived 3 minutes after the stop. Rachel looked at the prosecutor. Was that included in the report? The prosecutor flipped through the file. No. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. Officer Hargrove, were other officers present? Hargrove swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. And you neglected to include them in your report? It didn't seem relevant. Rachel couldn't hide her disbelief. You omitted a second officer during a use of force arrest? The room buzzed again. Judge Whitmore's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Officer, provide the name of the second officer. Hargrove hesitated, then finally spoke. Officer Tyler Briggs. The judge turned toward the clerk. Contact the department immediately. I want Officer Briggs present in this courtroom today. The clerk nodded and stepped out. Hargrove's breathing had changed now. Subtle, but noticeable. Marcus watched him quietly. Rachel leaned toward Marcus. You knew there was a second car. Marcus nodded. I saw the reflection in my mirror. Rachel shook her head slightly. You really don't miss much, do you? Marcus didn't answer. Across the room, Officer Hargrove looked less like a confident veteran cop, and more like a man beginning to realize something. The story he had written in his report was starting to collapse, and if the second officer confirmed Marcus Bennett's version of events, the missing footage would become the least of his problems. But the biggest shock of the morning was still on its way, because within the next hour, something else would arrive in courtroom 3, something no one expected, and when it did, the entire case would stop being local and start becoming federal. By the time the courtroom clock reached 10:12 a.m., the atmosphere inside courtroom 3 had completely changed. What had started as a routine misdemeanor hearing now felt like something much heavier. Lawyers in the gallery had stopped pretending to read their files. Every pair of eyes was now fixed on the same 3 people: Judge Eleanor Whitmore, Marcus Bennett, and Officer Daniel Hargrove. The quiet murmur that had filled the room earlier had faded into something more controlled. Anticipation, because everyone understood one thing now. This case was no longer simple. Judge Whitmore leaned slightly forward, fingers resting together on the bench. Officer Hargrove, she said calmly, the court has requested that Officer Tyler Briggs be brought in regarding the events of the arrest. Hargrove nodded stiffly. Yes, Your Honor. But the tension in his posture was obvious now. Rachel Kim noticed it immediately. She had spent years reading body language in courtrooms. Confidence had been replaced by calculation. Across the defense table, Marcus Bennett remained completely still. Watching, observing, Judge Whitmore glanced down at the case file again. While we wait for Officer Briggs to arrive, I would like clarification regarding the missing body camera footage. Hargrove shifted slightly. As I explained earlier, Your Honor, the recording malfunctioned. Rachel stepped forward. And yet the portion that failed just happens to be the moment the stop began. Hargrove didn't look at her. It's unfortunate. Rachel folded her arms. Yes, very. Judge Whitmore's voice carried a quiet edge. Officer, how long have you served with the department? 23 years. Have you ever had equipment failures before? Sometimes. How often? Hargrove hesitated. The pause was brief. But in a courtroom, brief pauses matter. Not often. The judge leaned back. Marcus spoke again. Quietly. It wasn't malfunctioning. Every head in the courtroom turned. Judge Whitmore looked at him. What do you mean, Mr. Bennett? Marcus met her gaze calmly. The camera was working when the stop began. Hargrove immediately spoke. That's not true. Marcus continued as if he hadn't heard him. It recorded the first interaction. Rachel slowly turned toward him. You saw the camera running? Marcus nodded. Yes. The judge narrowed her eyes slightly. And how would you know that? Marcus replied simply. The red indicator light was on. Silence spread again. Hargrove's jaw tightened. Maybe you imagined it. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. No. Rachel spoke carefully. Your Honor, this strengthens our request for preservation of all departmental video records. Judge Whitmore nodded. I agree. She turned toward the clerk. Contact the police department's evidence technician. I want the body camera unit used during this arrest secured immediately. The clerk wrote the note. Hargrove's shoulders stiffened. Then something else happened. The courtroom door opened. Not quietly, not dramatically, just deliberately. A man in a dark suit stepped inside. Behind him was a woman carrying a slim leather briefcase. Both of them wore the same small, unmistakable badge clipped at their waists. 3 letters. FBI. The moment was subtle, but the reaction was not. The gallery shifted immediately. Whispers spread. Judge Whitmore noticed the movement first. She looked toward the door. The man approached the center aisle calmly. Your Honor, he said politely. Apologies for the interruption. The courtroom froze. Judge Whitmore studied him carefully. Yes. He reached into his jacket, produced a badge. Special Agent Calvin Rhodes, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The whispering grew louder. The judge's tone remained controlled. Agent Rhodes, can I assist you? Rhodes nodded slightly. Yes, Your Honor. He glanced briefly toward Marcus Bennett, then toward Officer Hargrove. We're here regarding the incident involving Mr. Bennett's arrest. The prosecutor looked stunned. Rachel's eyes widened slightly, but Marcus did not react. Not even a little. Judge Whitmore tilted her head. Are you suggesting federal interest in this matter? Rhodes answered calmly. Yes, ma'am. The second agent stepped beside him. Special Agent Dana Morales. She placed the briefcase on the clerk's desk. Inside were several folders, neatly organized. Rhodes continued. At approximately 7:45 this morning, our office received notification regarding a potential civil rights violation involving a federally protected individual. The room went still again. Judge Whitmore's expression changed slightly. Federally protected individual? Rhodes nodded toward Marcus Bennett. Yes, Your Honor. Officer Hargrove spoke suddenly. This is ridiculous. Rhodes looked at him for the first time. His voice remained calm. Officer Daniel Hargrove. Hargrove stiffened. You know my name? Rhodes opened one of the folders. Yes. He flipped a page. You've been with the Jefferson County Police Department since 2003. Hargrove said nothing. Rhodes continued. You have 12 prior internal complaints. The gallery erupted in whispers. Judge Whitmore tapped the gavel once. Order. Rhodes looked back toward the bench. Your Honor, we are formally requesting that all evidence related to this arrest be preserved under federal review. The judge nodded slowly. Granted. Hargrove stepped forward. You can't just walk in here and take over a local case. Rhodes didn't raise his voice. We're not taking over. He closed the folder. We're investigating. Hargrove laughed nervously. For what? Agent Morales spoke for the first time. Possible civil rights violations, excessive force, evidence tampering, and falsified reporting. The words landed like a hammer. Rachel glanced toward Marcus. You knew. Marcus answered quietly. I suspected. Suspected what? That the report wouldn't match the truth. Judge Whitmore looked down at the federal agents again. What prompted federal involvement so quickly? Rhodes gave a small, almost amused smile. Your Honor, Mr. Bennett's service record triggered an automatic alert. Rachel blinked. Automatic alert? Rhodes nodded. When individuals with certain classified military backgrounds are arrested, it flags the Department of Defense. The room went silent again. Once that alert was triggered, Rhodes continued, the situation was forwarded to our office. Hargrove's face had gone pale. Marcus sat calmly, unmoving. Rhodes turned back toward him. Mr. Bennett, thank you for your patience. Marcus gave a small nod. You're welcome. Judge Whitmore folded her hands. So the federal government became involved because of who Mr. Bennett is. Rhodes answered carefully. Yes, Your Honor. Then he added something else. Something that changed the room again. But not only because of who he is. The judge raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Agent Morales opened another folder. Inside were printed photographs. She slid them across the clerk's desk. Because this traffic stop may not have been random, the courtroom went silent again. Rhodes looked directly at Officer Hargrove. Our preliminary review suggests the vehicle was flagged before the stop occurred. Rachel's voice dropped. Flagged. Rhodes nodded, which raises an important question. He paused, then finished the sentence slowly. Why was Officer Hargrove already waiting on that road before Mr. Bennett drove past? Every eye turned toward the officer, and for the first time that morning, Daniel Hargrove looked like a man who understood something terrible. The case wasn't falling apart anymore. It was exploding, and in the next hour, when Officer Tyler Briggs finally arrived to testify, the truth about what really happened that night would begin to surface. A truth far worse than anyone in that courtroom had imagined. By 10:47 a.m., the atmosphere in Courtroom 3 had completely transformed. What had started as a minor misdemeanor hearing now looked more like the opening act of a full federal investigation. No one had left. Not the lawyers. Not the spectators. Not even the reporters who had quietly slipped into the back rows after word spread through the courthouse that the FBI had entered the room. Judge Eleanor Whitmore sat at the bench with the composed stillness of someone who had presided over hundreds of trials. But even she knew this situation had escalated far beyond normal courtroom procedure. Across the room sat Marcus Bennett, still calm, still composed, the same posture he had maintained since the moment the hearing began. Beside him, Rachel Kim had shifted from defensive posture to quiet confidence. The presence of federal agents had changed everything. And then there was Officer Daniel Hargrove. Earlier that morning, he had stood like a man who believed his badge placed him beyond challenge. Now his shoulders were tighter, his breathing slightly uneven. Not panic yet, but something close. Near the side wall stood Special Agent Calvin Rhodes and Agent Dana Morales. They weren't speaking. They were simply observing, and that alone seemed to make the situation heavier. The courtroom door opened again. Everyone turned. A uniformed officer stepped inside, escorted by a deputy. Officer Tyler Briggs, the clerk announced. The second officer walked forward slowly. You could tell immediately he hadn't expected to walk into this situation. His eyes moved across the room. The judge, the federal agents, Marcus Bennett, then finally, Officer Daniel Hargrove. Something passed silently between them. Not acknowledgement, something closer to fear. Judge Whitmore gestured toward the witness stand. Officer Briggs, please take the stand. He swallowed and complied. Once seated, the clerk administered the oath. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth? I do. He sat stiffly, hands clasped together. Rachel Kim stood first. Officer Briggs, were you present at the traffic stop involving Mr. Marcus Bennett 2 nights ago? Yes. Did you arrive after the stop began? Yes. How long after? About 3 minutes. Rachel nodded. And when you arrived, what did you observe? Briggs hesitated. Just slightly, but it was enough. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. Officer Briggs, you are under oath. Yes, Your Honor. He looked briefly at Hargrove, then back at Rachel. When I arrived, Officer Hargrove already had Mr. Bennett out of the vehicle. Was Mr. Bennett resisting? No. The room stirred. Rachel continued calmly. What was Mr. Bennett doing? He had his hands raised. The silence grew heavier. Rachel walked slowly across the courtroom. Did you observe Mr. Bennett threaten Officer Hargrove in any way? No. Did you observe him attempt to flee? No. Did you observe him strike or attempt to strike Officer Hargrove? No. Across the room, Hargrove shifted uncomfortably. Rachel paused before asking the next question. Officer Briggs, did you see the body camera operating? Yes. The words hit the room like a dropped weight. Rachel's voice remained steady. You saw the red indicator light? Yes. Which means the camera was recording. Yes. A quiet wave of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Agent Morales quietly wrote something in her notebook. Rachel turned toward the judge. Your Honor, the arrest report states that the first 6 minutes of footage were lost due to equipment malfunction. Judge Whitmore nodded slowly. I'm aware. Rachel looked back toward Briggs. Officer, did you observe any malfunction of the camera during the stop? No. The tension in the room reached a breaking point. Judge Whitmore turned toward Officer Hargrove. Officer Hargrove, would you like to explain this discrepancy? Hargrove stood abruptly. Yes, Your Honor. He pointed toward Briggs. He must be mistaken. Briggs shook his head immediately. I'm not. Hargrove's voice rose. The camera malfunctioned. Agent Rhodes finally stepped forward slightly. Officer Hargrove. His tone wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. Please remain calm. Hargrove turned toward him. You don't get to tell me. Rhodes interrupted gently. We obtained the camera docking logs from your department 30 minutes ago. The room froze again. Agent Morales opened her briefcase. She removed a printed report and handed it to the clerk. Rhodes continued. The logs show the camera recording continuously from 21:14 to 21:32 on the night of the arrest. Rachel's eyebrows lifted. Judge Whitmore took the document and read silently. Then she looked up. Officer Hargrove. The footage exists. Hargrove's face drained of color. That's not possible. Rhodes answered calmly. The file wasn't deleted. Agent Morales finished the sentence. It was manually marked as restricted inside the department evidence system. A wave of whispers exploded through the courtroom. Judge Whitmore slammed the gavel. Order. She turned toward Hargrove again. Officer, are you aware that tampering with evidence is a felony? Hargrove opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Rhodes stepped forward one final time. Your Honor, with the court's permission, we would like to play the recovered footage. The judge nodded slowly. Proceed. The monitor was positioned again. The video began. The footage was clear. The timestamp showed 21:14. Marcus Bennett's car was pulled to the side of the road. Hargrove approached the vehicle. His voice came through the speakers. Step out of the car. Marcus complied immediately. Hands visible. Calm. The video continued. Marcus asked a simple question. Officer, may I ask why I was stopped? Hargrove responded sharply. You ask questions when I say you can ask questions. The tension in the courtroom grew. Then the footage showed something worse. Much worse. Hargrove stepped forward. Without warning, he shoved Marcus hard against the car. Gasps filled the courtroom. The video kept playing. Marcus didn't resist. He didn't threaten. He simply said, I'm complying. Then the moment that destroyed everything. Hargrove leaned close to Marcus and said a sentence that echoed through the speakers. People like you always think you're smarter than the badge. The courtroom erupted. Judge Whitmore slammed the gavel again. Silence. But the damage was already done. Agent Rhodes closed the laptop slowly. The room was dead quiet now. He turned toward Hargrove. Officer Daniel Hargrove. His voice was calm, professional, final. You are being placed under federal investigation for civil rights violations, falsified police reports, evidence tampering, and use of excessive force. 2 deputies stepped forward immediately. Hargrove looked around the room. The judge, the agents, the spectators, then finally Marcus Bennett. For the first time that day, the arrogance was gone. Marcus simply met his gaze. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, just quiet certainty. The certainty of a man who knew the truth would eventually surface. Judge Whitmore spoke one final time. Officer Hargrove, your conduct in this courtroom and during this arrest represents a complete failure of the authority entrusted to you. She paused, then delivered the words that ended his career. This court is referring the matter for full federal prosecution. The deputies placed handcuffs on Hargrove. The same officer who had walked into the courtroom believing he controlled the situation was now being escorted out of it, in chains. As the door closed behind him, the courtroom remained silent. Marcus Bennett slowly gathered his things. Rachel Kim turned toward him. You handled that better than most people could. Marcus shrugged slightly. I've been in more stressful rooms. Agent Rhodes approached him. Mr. Bennett, thank you for your cooperation. Marcus nodded once. You're welcome. Then he walked toward the exit. Quiet, unbothered. Just another man leaving a courtroom. Except everyone in that room now understood something important. That morning had started with a cop who believed his badge made him untouchable. But by the end of the hearing, it was clear he had chosen the wrong man to test his authority against. And the consequences would follow him for the rest of his life.